Mark Butcher and Andrew Miller joining me, and oh, the roller coaster of emotion that is England cricket, right, gentlemen? From a high of winning the World Cup to now a low of this Ashes series, and it's not even officially done yet. Looking now ahead to that final test at the Oval, we know exactly what's happened already, and it's all happiness for Australia, not so much for England. So you would think that there would be certain changes made to the squad for it, but guess what? They had other plans. Not one change made when that news came out. I know Miller was the first one that said, surprise, surprise. Was that a sarcastic surprise, Miller?
Oh, yeah. I'm baffled, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I know we don't want to go back to the good old days of bin everyone and get them in for one test at the end of the series and then they book their place in the winter tour, hurrah, hurrah. But at the same time, you're looking at a side that has monstrously underperformed, a batting side that has monstrously underperformed. You got one guy, Stokes, has been exceptional. Rory Burns has been decent. The rest, Joe Root has averaged 30, which is 20 runs lower than his career average. The rest have averaged between 13 and 25. I mean, that is just not good enough by any stretch of the imagination. And yet we're about to go into the fifth test of an Ashes series, and exactly the same team is going to be rolled out to do exactly the same thing and almost certainly have exactly the same result.
What's that quote about insanity that people say, Butch? Before we go into what changes you guys would like to see, Butch, do you agree with Miller then? Were England that bad for you, or have they been that bad in this Ashes series where you want to make a number of changes for this final test?
England's batting has been that bad for 3 or 4 years. You know, the Ashes series was an accident waiting to happen for the top order. And to be honest with you, I'm almost glad it has. Because, unless you lose something as important to everybody as the Ashes series, it's always very tempting to just keep papering over the cracks. England beat India last year by a margin of 4-1, which was unbelievably flattering to England. The runs that people like Sam Curran and Moeen Ali and co were scoring down at 7 and 8 were bailing out the inadequacies of the top order. And that happened in the West Indies too. That's why England didn't win the series in the West Indies, because the batting was poor. So the thing that surprised me about them not changing the squad was that this was a great opportunity to draw a line under all of these problems that they've been storing up for themselves and starting again. So you look at perhaps somebody that you think might be a permanent opening batsman, you give them a chance and then take them on the tour to New Zealand. So that probably Dominic Sibley is the next guy in line there, or even Zach Crawley perhaps to a lesser extent. You finally make a call about what you want Johnny Bairstow to do in your lineup. You make a call about Josh Buttler. Is Josh Buttler somebody that you want in the side at all costs? In which case, if he is, then he has to either keep wicket, he could even captain the side and bat at number 7. You're not playing in a test match team as a specialist batsman batting at number 7. Doesn't happen, shouldn't happen, never happen again.
Where would he stand in your side?
Well, at the moment, if he's going to play, he bats 7, keeps. If he's going to play, right? Otherwise, you leave him out and you pick Ben Foakes as a specialist wicket-keeper batsman to bat at 7 or 8 or whatever. That's how I would do it. Because at the moment, you cannot have somebody that you're picking to be a specialist batsman who has scored very, very few runs at a very, very poor average in first-class cricket, and then say, well, we're not sure about your form, but we'll have you bat at 7 and do nothing else. I said it was nonsense when it first started. I'm saying it's nonsense now. Please, somebody listen to me. So, those are 2 things already. In terms of, do you want Ollie Pope to be somebody that's going to bat at number 5 for you? Is Ben Stokes going to permanently be number 5? I think, and I've said this, went on record plenty of times, that Joe Root to captain the side and bat at number 4 is no good. At 3 is no good. You leave him at number 4. I would put him back at number 4 already and start the search again for somebody that you want to bat at number 3. Now, it might not be Jason Roy. In my opinion, England have given Jason Roy 0 chance of succeeding. Despite the fact that they desperately want him to succeed and want him in the side, they've given him no chance of being able to do so, opening the batting. So look, this test match was a chance to have changed lots of things. There's one thing, that light bulb that went off in my head while I was sitting here, in that Trevor Bayliss and the coaching staff stop at the end of this series. And so perhaps what the selectors decided to do was we'll keep everything as it is, and we'll give whoever takes over, the new guy, the clean slate, to do what he wants to do. In which case there is a small amount of logic in not changing it, a small one, and you give the 12, 13 players who have lost the Ashes the chance to maybe to square the series in the last test. That's the only logic I can see.
Miller, where do you stand on this one? Of course, Butch brought up a couple of good points there. There was
Sorry,
a lot of talk.
It was a bit of a rant, but
No, we love rants. It's
what he
emotional.
said.
There has been a lot of talk about, Ollie Pope, whether Curran will even get a look in as well. A couple of these things that you could think of for this last test that could serve as a mini audition, I suppose, going forward, given that you do want that clean slate. So what are some of the changes that you would have wanted to see as well?
Well, I think they nailed the permutations there. I mean, the trouble is there are no obvious answers to England's test problem, and as Butch mentions, the fact that Trevor Bayliss is leaving with huge credit for winning the World Cup. Fine, he was appointed as a white ball coach. He has been a hugely successful white ball coach. Fair play, but all throughout, Test cricket has been a nuisance to him, frankly, and so giving him a brand new team to tinker with in that final game, perhaps he probably would have ended up asking Dom Sibley to bat too quickly and ruin his technique in time for New Zealand.
minute 7.
So I can see the logic in not messing it up, charging the likes of Butler, who's underperforming, Bairstow, who's underperforming, Roy, who's looking out of his depth. Say, right, one chance to prove that you can crack it in red ball cricket and go to New Zealand, go to South Africa, and make a case for it. So, there's an awful lot to play for suddenly for these guys. The trouble is, as we've seen, as mentioned by Butch, they've been playing for their test futures for an awful long time and really haven't done much with that time. So I don't see how not changing the side now is going to change anything that's gone on so far in the series. I think 3-1 to Australia would be a very apt finale, and 2-2 would be a travesty. So I don't see how they're going to pull off another miracle, frankly.
We'll have to throw a little twist into things, though, because, of course, even though we're talking about the squad, we have to include the coaches, the fact that Trevor Bayliss is leaving, and we're looking at this clean slate as well. It's opened up the debate that whether England should have one coach for all three formats. As you mentioned, you used the word nuisance, which kind of got a chuckle out of all of us. Some say it's impossible. Some say it makes perfect sense. Butch, where do you stand on this debate?
Well, one of the things that I remember vividly from the time that the coaching role was split between Andy Flower and I think it was Ashley Giles, was that whichever format at the time was held in highest regard by the powers that be, that coach got the sort of the final say, or got the strongest hand in terms of which players he wanted and what they were going to do. And it always felt to Ashley Giles, when he was the white ball coach, that he was kind of given the dregs or the worn out or the players that he didn't really want for his 50 over team. So look, I think particularly the way that cricket teams manage themselves nowadays, that it's very, very possible to have one guy in charge of the lot, but he has 4 or 5 lieutenants. He can take certain trips off, leave it, hand it over to his lieutenant for a one-day trip, a one-day leg of a tour or whatever. But that all of them are working together. You don't have this sort of idea that there is a supremo of one and a supremo over the other. I think that would be a mistake. And so, yeah, I think that one guy in charge of a coaching pool of 4 or 5 would be exactly the right way to do it. I don't think there's any need for a split role.
Yeah or nay?
Yeah, I think the final word on that, I think to a degree, when England brought in their director of cricket role, they tried to have this sort of overarching umbrella to provide the structure. The trouble is, when it comes to something as specific as coaching, you're not just coaching techniques, you're assessing dressing room mood. You need to be there. You need to be there for man management. You've got to be there all the time for all the players, especially ones across all 3 formats. So it's incredibly difficult to split it.
Whew, a lot of questions still remain indeed, gentlemen. And of course, a new slate is expected in England's test team. But for now, as Andrew was saying, he wouldn't be too surprised if Australia managed to take this one 3-1.